Hello, everybody, and welcome again to TableTakes. Today is November 20th, and we are back. I know we were missing. Me and Isabella were missing last week, and also Derek. Emma is the only true dedicated person. I guess that's really what it is.
last week.
Back in.
No, wait, no,
Yeah.
didn't you?
No.
He
Okay,
left.
I was supposed to not be. And then once I was out of the game, they pulled me back
They
in.
pulled you back in. I see how it is. Well, I was missing out. What was everybody's time like? Emma, let's start with you. You just got back into something, you said?
Oh, yeah. I really blame this show like 90% and all of our recent discussions, especially last week with Abby, who is an amazing advocate of the Warcraft movie and totally supported me in my passions. And after all that discussion, after more than a year of being away, I have reinstalled World of Warcraft and I am back in there doing quests.
I understand it's a lifelong struggle. At some point, you're going to relapse. It's going to happen. We'll be here for you to support you on your way back out. Don't worry.
Well, because the Shadowlands is about to drop. It's coming like next week or something. It's a whole new expansion for World of Warcraft. And as everyone knows, with every new expansion, there's a bunch of new battle pets, which is Pokemon inside World of Warcraft, which is 90% of why I play. So that's...
I would try to. I was just realizing that I was about to be like, can you just come play Destiny instead and like be useful to me? And then I realized that Destiny doesn't have pets.
Yeah.
So I will never lure you into it. So
yeah, I mean, if they got Pokemon in Destiny, I would be there 100%.
I think a lot of people would have.
Yeah.
It's kind of goes
dragging you back in. What about speaking about new things that are coming up, Isabel? You got some new projects coming in, right?
I'm so sorry that I missed the last one. I had a sinus infection. And 2020 is not the year to like have any kind of infection or any kind of sickness. And I'm feeling better, mostly because of the fact that I'm just stuffed full of drugs. So they're doing great. The drugs are doing great. Other than that, my play was just announced in Broadway World this week. Jesus.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing an adaptation of a 1926 Mae West play called Sex. And
wow.
That's the name of it.
That is right to the sales. Right to the sales.
Listen. Okay, it was the 20s. We had to, couldn't have subtlety. And plus it's no nuance November. So it just fits right in. And that opens December the 4th. And so, we're in the final 2 weeks of tech. But please look on my Twitter and my social medias, and I'll post links to that.
Nice.
If you want to see a virtual performance with 13 performers from all over the country, doing a completely online performance of Mae West's seminal, infamous play Sex that got her arrested 4 times.
What?
Please come. I would love for people to watch it.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
That sounds, ooh. So mark the dates, everybody. Spicy. Anywho, Derek, what have you been up to?
I've been obsessing over and setting up my new computer that I'm on right now. So I bought one of those fancy new M1 chip Apple Silicon Mac Minis that apparently is the fastest computer that blows everything else out of the water. Remember how we used to play Tabletop Simulator, Emma? And it used to be like a chugga choo choo.
Yeah.
Now I can run it at 4K super smooth. It's crazy. It's great.
Kind of ironic that you need the cutting edge end of the line computer to play board games.
Yep. I mean, it's more of a tech demo, but like I've been very excited.
We have the
I got a Thunderbolt dock. I got a bunch of stuff.
Nice.
I'm trying to make the DSLR work to improve my camera setup. So like, my week has been a bunch of new tech toys. And now if Google Drive, Steam, and the Epic Game Store can just update their apps to actually work on Macs now, that'd be nice. Because I have the computer is super fast, right? I can run video games super well now. The Steam store, however, the storefront will eat up all of my CPU and run like an animated GIF. So not the best experience there that I hope they can improve real soon.
Mhm. All right. Oh, cool. I still think it's just because you're using a Mac and not just building your own PC. But that's a different, kind of.
You aren't wrong, but I'm still going to use the Mac because I like it more.
All right. Well, basically, I missed last week because I was slumming it with Nickelodeon, and now I'm back and I can relax. I can relax now, and I've just been doing my very actively sitting on my couch and reading manga and playing Animal Crossing. I even made my husband an account so I could have a new house and rebuild that. So now I have 2 houses to decorate. He doesn't even play it. I just play it under his name. Like, yes, more
And
houses.
they just expanded the inventory. Did you see that?
Yes, they did. I already bought all the inventory, and they also
and now you can sit, and you can also chew. They have the new chew feature, so you can kiss your animals now.
You can wave your arms at them too. It's very, very dedicated.
And all the new holiday stuff is going to be coming in there too.
Yeah.
I thought about getting back in as well.
All the
come back in. Yes.
Yeah. Also, Bonsai, you were in a commercial.
Yeah,
I saw that video you shared. That was amazing.
I was in there for Amazon Luna. Yes, that was. I got to play with that fancy stuff, and it's just very exciting to see all the things. I'm very busy. Look at that.
I only got permission to try that out too, so I can't wait to see it.
Oh, all the stuff. But speaking about new things that are coming in, and just being really excited about it, Derek, you got some good hammy news, right? All the hammies.
Yes. Do you like ham? It is the holiday season. Time to eat ham. What about war ham? So there's going to be another big GW kind of premiere release preview online kind of event thing tomorrow, but in UK time, so like 6 a.m. Pacific time for us, like 9 a.m. Eastern. So it's one of those things of I'm vaguely considering being dumb and using it as an excuse to stay up all night or something like that, because I like doing that. But they haven't announced exactly what they're going to preview. They've said that it's going to cover, like 5 of their major lines and stuff like that. But it's called Decadence and Decay, which strongly suggests that it's going to be about Slaanesh, or primarily about Slaanesh and Nurgle, or their factions or people who are related to them in all the different games, whether that's Age of Sigmar or 40K or Necromunda or whatnot, which is great for me because I really love the Death Guard, who are all Nurgly. They've previewed a few Death Guard things, so chances are that the codex, the new terrain, a new model and stuff like that will probably be included in that, but we don't know what the Decadence part is going to be. There's a lot of hints of the Demon Primarch Fulgrim, if I remember correctly. We'll see how that shows up. But it's one of those things of you can either catch the stream really early in the morning from the UK, or you can wait later in the day, and there'll be a full rundown on the Warhammer community blog. So if you play Age of Sigmar, 40K, Necromunda, Warhammer Underworlds, or even Middle-earth miniatures game, there should be something new and exciting for you coming out early tomorrow morning.
Very, very cool. Is there any other news that are connected to that by any chance?
There is. So in addition to the big announcement that they're going to have tomorrow, the GW has also released some details of what's going to be coming out over the holidays. So, we talked about how Blood Bowl was just getting a new edition. A new team has been released that's basically like, hey, do you like Halloween? Because now you can have scarecrows, werewolves, zombies, mummies, and vampires playing together on some weird ass team. See what I mean? So you can basically play all of the Halloween mascots playing murder football, fantasy football. So that is coming out shortly, and I think it's for pre-order for now. And there's also a number of battle boxes, Battleforce boxes that GW comes out with every holiday season, and these are like $150, $200, and you tend to get like $300 or $400 worth of models if you were to buy them all separately. So it's, if you really want to get into having a big 40K army, this is an economical way, not a cheap way, but an economical way of kind of getting into it.
High value.
High value. especially for stuff you just want multiples of. So for 40K, they announced boxes for Space Marines, Necrons, Astra Militarum, Chaos Space Marines, Tau, Tyranids, and Blood Angels. So if you play one of those armies and you need a bunch more troops or something like that, this is a really good way to just get a bunch of that.
Very, very cool. So keep that on your list. Holiday season's just around the corner, folks. Speaking of things that are just like blowing up on Twitter, I don't know if you've heard, but there has been some quite like basically some news has come about Twitter that recognizes that maybe the gaming industry has some problems that we have to address. Emma, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there has been a controversy, as you mentioned. The Indie Press Revolution recently released a job posting and had an immediate backlash to their posting on Twitter. A couple of the standout things that people were frustrated with was the low hourly rate, $10 per hour, relocation to rural Nevada, and this is not an exaggeration. Literally in the post, it says the nearest grocery store is 100 miles away, and the speed limits are pretty high in Nevada, but that's still pretty far. There's also a lot of requirements for the job. So, you know, minimum wage is what it is in different regions. Cost of living is very different in different regions. This might make sense for certain retail positions, but this is actually an assistant manager job. And in addition to warehouse duties, there's content creation duties, convention, travel duties. After the post was released and the backlash happened, their IPR did respond and have some comments about it. For example, they updated to say that they would help with the costs of relocation. And another one of the big things was, and as someone who works in retail, they kind of said the quiet thing loud, where if someone comes up to you at a convention and is aggressive or is kind of attacking you, that you're supposed to have a non-committal response. This is something that customer service people do as part of their job, and then you refer to the manager. And so basically the idea is you shouldn't have to deal with it as a frontline customer service. The manager is more trained for it, so you can kind of hand it off. But when you say that, especially not taking into consideration relative privileges of different people and how those comments might be sexist or racist, and you kind of have to stand there and take it, a lot of people read this and were not very happy about it. As we're going into this discussion, we don't want to hate on IPR, because IPR is actually an amazing company. They're making cutting edge role-playing games and doing some really cool stuff. So it's not really, you know, the games industry is amazing and IPR is just being kind of a jerk. It's more like this is symptomatic of what's happening in games, in role-playing games, in indie board games. And the thing is just like, in a lot of cases, there's not a ton of money and there's not a ton of wiggle room to get the money to play more fair wages. So it's kind of like, well, what do you want us to do? You want us to raise prices for the end consumer? And then the end consumers are like, we're already spending so much money on this hobby. So it's a tough situation.
I mean, I think one of the things that's kind of shocking about this when I initially read this, one is this idea of assistant manager paying $10 hourly rate, when, like, you know, the kind of standard of living that we're all trying to work towards is like at least a minimum of $15 an hour. And then also this locating to rural Nevada, which, like, what kind of a person can make that kind of a change? Like, you can't do that if you have a family. I mean, not for $10 an hour, where you're just going to move your entire family out to this rural, remote area in Nevada. Like, it's a very specific kind of a person. And my criticism for them would be, I hear that they're doing really incredible work, but my criticism would be that it's very obvious that they're trying to get a very young, eager, impressionable, hungry kind of a person to apply for this job, who is willing to take low wages and to not have a good standard of living. And it doesn't even say for how long. Are you just supposed to live in this remote area for just an infinite amount of time? If they had put something else into this, as far as like, you have to live in this, I just keep imagining that they're like, you have to live in this shanty. You have to live in this shack that has like no indoor plumbing, but there's a warehouse right next door where you're just alone packaging. You know, it's like the warehouse in like Indiana Jones. Like,
my gosh, yeah.
That's the only thing that pops into my mind for $10 an hour. And like the idea of like, but what else do you get? Do you get stock in the company? What's the kind of upward mobility for this kind of a job? What do you get promoted into after a certain amount of years? I don't see any of that stuff listed on this. And so it feels honestly like they are taking advantage of a very specific kind of person that they're looking for to take this job. So to me, that's it's a little sketch.
Yeah, but like I think the really kind of depressing part is that and why I think this incited so much passion on Twitter. Like this was a firestorm for like 2 or 3 days, I think. And I think IPR has done a reasonable job of responding to it, with at least some of their statements, stuff like that. But like I think the reason that it elicited such a response is that people who are in the industry and people who are connected with the industry know all those things. And we all know, like if you want to be unfair or if you want to be very harsh, how much of the industry survives on effectively taking advantage of people who are willing to be taken advantage of, in the sense of they already have a partner who has health insurance that covers them. They live in a place of the country where it's really cheap. They love the product so much that they are willing to work for rates that would be considered, far below an acceptable standard in any other industry. And we still don't have an industry that is almost self-sustaining at that level. Like there's Wizards of the Coast, there's Paizo, there's a few other companies kind of, maybe like orbiting around that kind of form, real companies with real employee kind of level. And then there are just many, especially in the indie community, where you are not a game designer as your full-time job. Usually, you do it as a loss leader. Like, you might have 1 or 2 other jobs that you literally do to fund the job that you lose, quote unquote, money on, just because of the amount of time you spend on it. And it's like, that's just really heartbreaking. I'm just imagining all of the amazing games we would have if the industry was large enough to support creators, or if we had universal healthcare or universal basic income or something that allowed people to justify spending more time on this stuff, instead of, well, I'm a teacher so I can design games in the summer, or my wife or my partner, my husband or whoever works on, for like a real company, so I can stay home with the kids and work on games in my spare time. Like it's, just the number of people that I've seen that are brilliant game designers who ultimately just have to make the choice of, I want a house, I want a family, so I'm not making games anymore, is just real sad to me.
Yeah. And I think, because we're talking about different companies, and it is something, I'm very enmeshed in the industry. This is my full-time job. I think the relocation is one of the biggest things here, because it is such a rural area, and the risk of it is the thing that tipped me over the edge, because you move out there, they might help to get you out there, but there's so many things that can go wrong. Most states are at will employment, so they can just fire you for no reason. Maybe you just don't work out as an employee. Maybe you mutually decide it's not a great fit for the both of you, and then you're kind of stuck out there, right? They're not going to pay to send you back to wherever you lived before you moved out here, right? So I think that's, again, exactly as Isabella said, coming back to the exploitation aspect of it, is you're looking for someone young and impressionable who hasn't had these life experiences and who is rose-colored glasses, right? I'm going to go out there. This is going to be my new life. I'm so excited. And they don't necessarily think about the tough realities of it. You're looking at something like Gen Con, for example. It's in Seattle now. I forget exactly how long it's been here for, but there's other stuff here. So if you did come out to work for Gen Con or for other companies, you're not taking as much of a risk. And I think really the delicate balance to strike here is to be like, hey, this is something, and what I say to people who want to get into games, like, you do need support to make this happen. It's not self-supporting. You need to look at the realities of it, and what are you going to do if it goes south? Like, how are you going to pay for health insurance? How are you going to make sure that your standard of living doesn't take away from your passion and your creativity? So it's just, I think, being a little more transparent about these things and just making sure people understand. And that you're not taking advantage of people who are just excited and passionate and will do anything to get into this industry.
I think we can all agree that the real enemy is capitalism.
Yes.
Agreed.
100%.
We must destroy capitalism so we can all just play the games and make the games that we want to play and not have to live in a shanty in the middle of Arizona in the dirt and eat the turnips and eat the dirt.
So Isabella, I feel like maybe you need to take a vacation to rural areas.
I've never been to Nevada.
I was about to say, so you can that they don't all live in shanties and eat turnips right out of the ground.
My last time, it's just all like the Tombstone movie, right? It's just all people like, it's just Wyatt Earp and they just come up. That's my idea.
With the storefronts, the fake fronts of the stores, and it's all shacks behind.
It's not like that anymore.
Oh,
Didn't know.
Yeah. If there was universal basic income, if there was health insurance, then this would be totally reasonable. If you didn't have to stake your existence and your health and your life on this.
Yeah, totally.
But no, I feel like this general discussion is bigger than what this, like, basically what we started talking about with the indie press revolution. I feel like if we have a lot of things to say, if we can move this topic to a main discussion one day of tackling, like, hey, what do we want as the customer versus the designer? And that'd be something that I feel like chat would be really interested in discussing. Like, if we raise up the price, does it necessarily raise up the gate for people who are of lower income to join? And there's like quite a discussion about that. But unfortunately, we don't have all the time to go into that. I feel like if we could just put a pin into there and like, chat, let us know, do you want us to talk about or chat, or even on YouTube? Let us know in the comments if you want us to have that full-on discussion of like the capitalism of gaming in the industry, designer's point of view. Let us know. But now for other news that maybe we'll go ahead and lift up our spirits. Isabella, do you have a clue what is going on with Disney?
Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So if you are a big fan of the Disney villains like I am, you are going to really like this new version of the Clue game. I think this is a really cool way of reinventing Clue for a brand new audience. Basically, what they did was they put the villains as the characters in the game. And they have different kinds of, my favorite thing about this is all the weapons that can be used instead of like Colonel Mustard in the library with the wrench or the rope. They have the murder weapons are scepter, scarab, talisman, shell, poison vial, and apple. This is a really cool idea for reinventing the Clue. Also, I love the idea that they're just like, the Disney villains are murderers. They have murdered people. Get used to it. So it's now available for $40 and it has really cool figurines, magical tokens inside, and it comes in a really cool box. And it's a short kind of playtime, would be great for the holidays.
Yeah.
Ooh, things to look forward to. I also, if you just click on the link, like the character figurines and everything is so slick looking. Go look at it. On other related news that's coming out, WotC, basically Wizards of the Coast, released their big annual D&D survey. So if you are not familiar, every year Wizards of the Coast posts this survey to figure out what people want, what are people interested in. So if you want to take it to see, like, basically this is your time to change the games that we are going to be playing next year. So like, for example, if you want to go ahead and get a taste of what they're going to ask you, they're going to simple questions of like, what's your favorite class? What's your favorite race? What's your favorite campaign setting? Hint, hint. Maybe you should put something down that you like. Derek's asking for dark. Yeah, I was going to say Derek is asking. So like, if you are also a game designer, or like a campaign designer, this is maybe something that you'd be like, hey, hint, hint, go ahead and fill out this survey. Also, they want to know, like, how did you get into D&D? How long have you been playing? What products do you own? Like, do you own like fifth edition books and such? And this is just to get people excited and, so people can then speculate on what they're going to be producing next year. So if you want to go ahead and change and create things and make things like influence, this is a very hard word, how WotC is going to make their games for next year for 5th edition. Click on that link, answer those questions, get into that survey, tippity tap on the keyboard, and get that information in. Well, folks, man, with that was our last big news of the day. Now we're going to go ahead and straight hang out in the Bundle Boss with Derek. Bundle Boss.
So we have 4 bundles for this week. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly, just so that we can stay on target. First, we have 2 bundles on Humble Bundle. We have our cup overfloweth on Humble Bundle this week. The first one is the Conan bundle from Modiphius. So if you are curious about the current edition of the Conan RPG, you're going to want to pick this up. It's $18 for everything. That all adds up to like $254 worth of books. For just $1, you get the player's guide, a quick start, you get an art book, stuff like that. For $8, you get the full core book and a bunch of other stuff. And there's a lot in there. And I actually really like how they did some of these releases, because I don't know if anybody, people who've just seen the Conan movie might not realize like how many phases of Conan like he went through. Like, so some of the books they have are like Conan the King, Conan the Thief, Conan the Mercenary, Conan the Pirate. Like Conan went through a lot of phases. He took a while to find himself and really like figure out who he was.
Really?
So the book that's like, what about the court society, like kingdom building game or version of Conan? Well, get the Conan the King book, and that's going to give you the rules. What about like the dungeon delving version of Conan? Well, Conan the Thief is going to have some of that stuff for you. So I think it's a very cute thing, because it kind of ties into how they categorize eras of Conan. Again, it's a Humble Bundle. It supports a charity that you can pick. It's $250 something worth of stuff for $18 if you go for the big deal. So if you like Conan, check it out. The other very noteworthy Humble Bundle, this one benefiting Able Gamers, which is a nonprofit that's close to a lot of our hearts, because it tries to make games, both video games and tabletop games, more accessible to more people. So they're a really good charity. This is the Cyberpunk bundle. So what's really interesting here is this is $500 worth of PDFs and whatnot. It's $15 for the top tier. And it is just like, if you want a blast from the past and a chance to kind of revisit old school Cyberpunk before we all hunker down for a few months of Cyberpunk 2077, this is great, because even just the $1 tier has like, books on cyberware, books on guns, books on entertainment and culture from the setting. A lot of the stuff that the Cyberpunk games on tabletop really kind of push the idea of just releasing material that was just about what it was like to live in the world. And you can get a bunch of those for $1. So I'd buy that for $1. Anyway, that's really crap. But then for $8, you get the Cyberpunk 2020 core book and the Cyberpunk Red, which is the new edition Jumpstart. You get a bunch of other basic source books and stuff like that. When I was writing my notes, I realized that I can't say the 2020 edition of the Cyberpunk RPG, because it's 2020. The game is Cyberpunk 2020, but if I say the 2020 edition of Cyberpunk, I probably mean Cyberpunk Red, which is set just prior to 2070. Anyway, you'll get some of that.
Aliens. That's the answer.
No, that's a different game. So if you like Cyberpunk as a genre or a game, throw some money at the bundle. And then Bundle of Holding also has 2 bundles, one of which is new, one of which is old. Some of you may have heard about Symbaroum, which is, if you haven't, it is kind of one of the premier European dark fantasy settings. Really rich, evocative art. Not quite D&D heroic fantasy, but much more kind of mean, like go into the forest, you might not survive kind of dark fantasy. So they've resurrected from 2018 the kind of basic Symbaroum bundle. This for $15, you get the core book, the advanced player's guide, a couple adventures. The level up version currently is at $26. They get you more adventures, a campaign book, and an art book. And the art is gorgeous, by the way. A lot of the European games have really incredible art. The second bundle, the new one, is the settings bundle. But it actually, I think, it is a lot of adventure material. there's a number of parts of this overall Throne of Thrones campaign. So if you are enticed by Symbaroum and you want enough material to run a campaign, you want some more monsters, maybe you got the old bundle, then this new bundle is a really good one to add on top of that, because it seems really adventure focused. So it might help you actually get Symbaroum to the table. And then both of those charities, like a lot of the charities we've seen on Bundle of Holding lately, are benefiting Direct Relief, which is a nonprofit that is making sure that, you know, first responders and medical care professionals are getting their protective gear, critical medications, and stuff like that. So again, you can sample a dark fantasy game, get a taste of Europe, and help some folks who are real important to the U.S. right now. Or real important to the world right now.
Yeah.
Considering the circumstance. So those are your 4 bundles for the week.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. So, but yeah, so both of those bundles, one Humble Bundle is for able gamers, and the Bundle of Holding for Direct Relief. So guys, if you want to get games and get some books and just give money to charity, this is the route you're gonna have to go, or not have to go, but like this is a way you can go. Now it is time for our Kickstarter Queen. It was Kickstarter Corp, but it looks like we got dethroned and the Kickstarter Queen reestablished herself.
There's a constant cycle. Like every week, I'm apparently
There's
both I'm dethroned and rethroned. Like I feel like you just want someone to rebel against.
The country is very unstable. The government is very unstable.
Well, why don't we start off with Dark Venture, Battle of the Ancients. So this has 4 days left on Kickstarter, and it describes itself as a tactical strategy game set in a dark fantasy future where players control asymmetric factions engaging in brutal conflict. So you can read that, or you can go to the Kickstarter and look at the almost neon-covered weirdo gonzo art. So if you are one of those people who likes Morkborg, or you like the weird irradiated wasteland mutant apocalypse D&D bizarro settings, I have a feeling this might be up your alley. And then the preview video is very 80s VHS TV commercial vibe to it, and it's very cute. I was lured in by asymmetric factions, and it looks like you have these different factions who are they have different units. Those different units, they have different numbers of units. The units have different strengths. They have different powers. Anytime you have a multiplayer game where the different factions are just fundamentally different, and they're not just reskins or anything like that, I get very interested and excited. And then it has a solo mode, it has a co-op mode, it has competitive mode, and then there are scenarios that you can play in order to have a storyline emerge. So like, sounds like a lot of interesting stuff. But definitely just look at the Kickstarter, and if you can imagine the heavy metal music kind of rising in the background as you set this up on the table or something, then it probably will go well for you. So that has 4 days left.
Very cool. Well, with 5 days left, Wednesday, November 25th, the Wild Sea RPG. So basically, here. You know Waterworld, right?
Yes, I love
But
Waterworld.
imagine instead of water, it was trees that took over, and the only places that you could be on were tops of mountains, because that's what this game is. It's a post-fall fantasy in like an alternate universe where like we had other alternate species along, but instead of an ocean taking over, just the forest went and then basically took over everything. And it was like, haha, buildings, no. So it's a new fiction first RPG in a world that is always being consumed by an ever-growing forest that you can cut it down and it'll just regrow back as soon as possible. It's like really mutated super forest. And just look at this. Some of the artwork for this is awesome. The ship you ride in is a chainsaw powered ship that rides on top of the branches. You're just literally riding on the biggest chainsaw in the gosh darn world. And the illustrations, by the way, crisp, beautiful. You love that stuff. Just really beautiful artwork, everything going into it. And the system itself is very similar to Blades, Blades in the Dark, if you guys like those kind of things. It's with D6 fail forward mechanics. Players, you know, they have their own character sheet as well as a group shared sheet, which is basically the big chainsaw ship. And it looks like, it does look a little bit like Forge in the Dark system, but just slightly tweaked a little bit. I myself have already backed this. I got it at the higher tier levels because I really want the hard copy. But yeah, no, just this applies to me because also as a woodworker, I'm like, yes, beat the trees back and make it beautiful.
That's your inspiration.
If any Kickstarter should have a wooden box as like a high tier add-on, this should be it.
It is.
The dice is cool.
Not.
I like the dice design though, that wooden dice.
But yeah, no, just take a look at it. It's really cool. The Wild CRPG, 5 days left, Wednesday, November 25th.
Nice. Also, Emma, don't think that I didn't hear that Waterworld is one of your favorite movies. We will be revisiting that.
I love Waterworld.
I have so many questions.
It's been a while since I watched it, but I used to definitely have a thing for it.
No judgment. I just have a lot of questions.
I'm sorry.
So 2020. No judgment. I'm just concerned. 2020 has been a very, very long year, and for some people, myself included, a very rough year. And sometimes in order to get yourself through it, you need a little strange. That's right, a little strange lust and a little strange loves in order to help get you through this just dumpster fire of a year. And I'm very excited to present this new anthology of erotic interactive fiction. You guys were not impressed by my art.
They were overwhelming us.
No, I don't need it. It's okay. This Kickstarter is brought to you by Strange Horizons, which, if you don't know, is a really incredible group of science fiction and strange fiction. They have a magazine, and they have online a magazine that you can read, and they have an incredible plethora of different diverse voices in the science fiction genre. It's some of my favorite.
An amazing team on this project.
Amazing team on this project. And basically this is an anthology that celebrates sex positivity and embraces a vast variety of sexual identities and types of intimacy. It's very science fiction-y, mixed together with an erotic sort of a thing. I think that this is really great because exploring eroticism in the kind of gamescape, interactive fiction, as they're calling it, because I think the fiction, there's a lot of reading to this. I think one of the things that we talked about beforehand was the idea that it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, but horny. Which is, for people like me, I grew up on choose your own adventure books. This is like right up my alley. And I'm going to really try not to do many dirty puns, but my God, it's so hard.
That's what you do there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that was a little one. This anthology will be available if it completes its complete backing. It'll be available online on the Strange Horizons website. But if you back it now on Kickstarter, you'll be able to get a special collection of 2 micro games as well. So I think that this is a really cool idea, a really great idea, a way of sort of exploring sexuality and sensuality in the kind of interactive gaming kind of a sandscape. And if you're in a relationship with other people, a way that you can kind of explore your sexual proclivities and taste and things like that. Or if you are going through 2020 alone, a way of also imbibing in your own sexuality and exploring some things in the deep, dark, cold winter that is pressing its cold, hard body against us any minute. So with 6 days left, this is Strange Lust, Strange Loves. Please check it out. And moving right along into my next one, this is a Kickstarter with 7 days left called Bard Sung. And I wanted to present this one much to Derek's chagrin, because it had me at no GM necessary. It's a dungeon crawler where you go through, inspired by bards who never get as much love as they need. Bards never get as much respect as they deserve. Okay,
True.
everybody's like, sing your little songs, bard, do your little dance, you know, throw a coin to your
I feel like
witch
you
or
have
LOL.
some personal issues that you might need to get therapy here for your bard characters you played.
You imagine I'm going to therapy for like $150 an hour, and they're just like, we're going to talk about bards again.
Yep.
Please.
Exactly.
Can we talk about your childhood trauma? I'm like, no.
No,
Okay?
Nope, you're like, it's either bards or horny books. So one of those two.
Listen, okay. I stand by this. No one is hornier than people that play TTRPGs. It's a fact. All right. And nobody's hornier in the game than the person who chooses to be the bard. The person who chooses to be the bard, also very horny. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, no shame whatsoever. So inspired by bards, this is an RPG dungeon explorer for 1 to 5 players. No GM necessary. We love to hear it. And this ends with 7 days left. Derek?
Wow. Well, so I will wrap up. There were 2 remaining Kickstarters very quickly. One of them is metal bullet dice, like D6 set. And this is one of those projects that just kind of I'm conflicted on, because part of me is like, yeah, guns and bullets are cool. And these are like little hexagonal bullets, and you just kind of roll them like the long, thin dice that some people have seen at conventions. And it comes in a little dice box that looks like a cylinder or a speed loader for a revolver. So like super cool. I want to have these on hand if we're ever going to play like a Blades in the Dark or Power by the Apocalypse hardcore shoot 'em up game. Like I've got Cartel on my shelf, might be perfect for that. But then part of me is also like, guns, like maybe we don't need to fetishize guns so much. But then the other part of me is like, it's cool bullets, man. It's little metal, like just take it. So I'm conflicted. You're probably conflicted. Go check it out and resolve your confliction, maybe by backing it. I don't know. It's real cute. It's real clever. It's thematic. It'd be perfect for some games. Yeah. And then, so that has 10 days left, actually. Man, you just need to have your own project on how to get everybody the unicorn cup, because every episode.
It is the best cup.
So
It's one of the
also
best
with
things I've ever bought.
also with 10 days left is Beetle and Grimm's Complete Character Chronicles. And this is noteworthy because Beetle and Grimm, if people don't know, have been making these really amazing special edition versions of D&D adventures when they come out. So, you know, there was like a Ravenloft one. There was a, like every major campaign book ends up getting one of these. And if you love, you want to talk about the luxury D&D experience, this is it. But they've only been making D&D ones. So this is really interesting because it's their first foray into supporting Pathfinder, I believe. So these are a collection of character journals for cleric, warrior, thief, or cleric, fighter, wizard, and rogue. So not all of the classes, but the classic ones. And they come in vegan leather covers. You can get a vegan leather little sack, like a carry sack. It was noteworthy that they explicitly called out that it was vegan. Normally they just, pass by that. But like, if you ever wanted to have a full character book for your one character and you wanted it to be really nice, have all the rules to play that character, a ton of space to write down all the details for the character, the journal to track its history, that's all here. It's a really neat project. But definitely one that would never work for me because I can't imagine having one character for that long. Like, I don't know. I cycle through a lot of characters, but it's a really interesting area for Beetle and Grimm to get into and to see them branch out from D&D. So if you're a Pathfinder player or a Pathfinder player and they want a very special way to store their character notes, then you should check this one out.
All right.
And that is it for Kickstarters.
Very cool. But wait, folks, don't go anywhere. We're gonna go on a quick break because right after this, we're gonna get an interview with Peter Adkison about Chaldea. So Chaldea Studios and stuff. And what are they? What are they and all that information? If you guys want to hear about the new things coming up, about what is Chaldea, what do they do, what do they produce, stick around. We'll just do a quick break really quick while we reorganize everything. And we'll have that personal interview with Peter Adkison just coming up. So stick around, folks.
All of existence, everything that has been or ever will be, begins within a singularity of creation. And when newborn ages exploded with vibrant life, elder ages decayed and died. Of these many worlds, one shone brighter than the rest. Chaldeans loved their new emperor, and Chaldeans feared their new emperor. His 40 years of peace generated affluence, security, and bountiful harvests. The age of gods had arrived.
It's a war simulation. As we like to say, better to lose soldiers on the table than in the field.
The Emperor is dead!
Kill the infidels! What happens to an empire when the God Emperor dies?
200,000.
200,000 screaming orcs.
I call you all to war!
Everybody, and welcome back. We are here with Peter Adkison and of course Derek and Emma as well, and we're really excited about what Chaldea has to bring. So first, Peter, hello, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Bonsai, Emma, Derek. So good to see y'all.
Good to see you too.
No, it is. So here, first question, what is what is Chaldea, and what is your inspirations for all of this various world?
Yeah. Okay, what is okay, how many hours do we have?
Tell us your life story.
Yeah, Chaldea. Okay, so Chaldea it's a story. It's a world and a story. If you think about like a Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, that fundamentally that's what it is. It's a world, a story. It's fantasy. It's dark, it's violent and sexy, and it's also based on my Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which I started back in 1981 or so, somewhere. The memory gets a little foggy about exactly when things happened. But it's a story set in my old D&D campaign, and it's launching December 2020 as a YouTube channel. So the story will be told in episodes, or we call them chapters because we're more like comic book than anything else. And then we have a bunch of other stuff because it's a YouTube channel. So you know how that is. You have to be active with stuff. But basically, we're gonna have 8 episodes that start on December 20 and go through March. That will be the first installment of what this story is. And the episodes or chapters are told primarily through comic book art, with some limited amount of motion graphics, and also some live action film. A live action film, of course, is very expensive, so it's more like in a video game you might occasionally have a cutscene to a short little movie. Think of it that way. But the comic book art has voiceover, has a full sound treatment, so it's going to sound really great with an original score and ambient sounds and voiceovers and great cast of actors, and fun fantasy stuff.
Oh yes, all that. Yeah. So if you guys were hanging out during the break, that was the trailer that you saw. Like the mix between the live action, the motion comic books, all that. It's just like, that's the kind of quality you can expect to see. By the way, we're posting the link right in chat. So you guys go ahead, click subscribe, get to there if you want. If you liked that promo and that commercial, jump right into it, click there, subscribe, like it's just very, very exciting. At least from
Thank you. Thank you for the plug. Yes, please come subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's like every
so
YouTuber
exciting.
says that, right? Please subscribe.
Remember to like and subscribe. You need to do both.
Yeah.
Like,
Come on.
subscribe,
Like,
share, tell your
comment.
friends. Yeah, all that, all the
Hit
things.
that bell icon so you get notified about every new video I release.
Yes, good idea, Derek.
All the good stuff. But yeah, you mentioned that it's like a mesh between live action and motion comics. Like, so how hard was that to like produce from behind the scenes?
Well, yeah, tricky. I mean, because we're simultaneously a film company and a comic book company, and so and the way these things are produced are very different. So each of these pieces was probably made in a fairly straightforward way. Live action is about figuring out, okay, what scene we finally scraped together enough money to film something. You put together a film crew and you build a set where you go on location, and just like any other film, it's you spend a year planning it, and then there's 4 days of filming where you're working long hours, but it's a lot of fun, and then you take a year to do post-production. So
and that's what you've been spending the past several years learning how to do, right? Because you were directing and helming and steering a lot of this, or all of it, right?
So I went to film school in 2012, and after one of my companies went out of business, and it was like, I was depressed, and like, okay, I just want to do something different. So at age 50, I said, I'm going to go to film school, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. It took me a while to figure out what to do with it afterwards, but then eventually we kind of settled on this idea of creating a fantasy story with film. But it was also we quickly realized that filming fantasy, especially, I mean, if you're going to pick a genre that's expensive to film and you don't want to do it in a campy way, but in a really serious, high quality way, it'd be hard pressed to find something more expensive than fantasy, because it's all the complications of a period shoot plus magic and monsters. So yeah, I did. I've done the directing of all our live action. I have a business partner, creative partner named Steve Conard, who's actually worked. Derek, you've worked with Steve before, I'm pretty sure. He's worked on at all my various companies. He was with me at the beginning at Wizards of the Coast, and so on. He takes the lead on the comic book art and screenwriting. So he does all the screenwriting. Him and his team. And so the comic book stuff is we make the art. We do a lot of all the art has to be done in layers so that you can move objects across a screen. So you have a character move, don't suddenly have an empty spot where there was nothing there in the art, right? And so that's how we do most of the motion graphics is done with layered art using After Effects and Premiere. And yeah.
So
really
Chaldea has some dark themes and adult content. Who is it appropriate for? What does it explore and why?
Yes, it does have dark themes. This is definitely not for children. It's definitely for adults, for people who like darker sorts of material. It's influenced heavily by history. I love history. I've been a fan of history my whole life. I was a history major actually in college before I figured out it was difficult to get good work in that line of field. So, and so my Dungeons and Dragons campaign grew out of a love for history, and this, of course, is a natural extension of that. And as something inspired by history, history. We should appreciate how wonderful the world is now. I know we get all sort of frustrated with the things that are problems in the world, and we should be tackling the big issues and make the world even better. But the world is so much better than it was back in those days. And I've always kind of thought, it's not very realistic to try and paint a pretty picture of what medieval life was like.
Oh,
and
Oh.
so the world is kind of a combination between medieval and ancient. Kind of, we take some liberties there, and there's a lot of wars, a lot of violence, there's slavery, there's oppression, there's tyranny, and I was also inspired by Kurt Vonnegut's quote that drag your heroes through the mud so we know what they're made of. And so I like the idea of a dark landscape, but I'm actually like good characters for heroes. I mean, most of the characters that are the main characters are trying to rise above all of that, and are generally pretty good. And we got one character that we might say is kind of morally complex, who has a really rough upbringing in a ghetto, a victim of domestic violence, and his family works in slavery, but he comes out of this, right? So he has his path to get to sort of a good place is a much longer arc that takes quite a while. But I'm kind of a fan of the Disney ending, if you will.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
So
yeah,
I was going to say, Peter, you were talking about how inspired you were by history, and Chaldea, or there was a kingdom, a nation, a region, known by the name Chaldea, like I guess in southeastern Mesopotamia, I think, that ruled over Babylon for a period of time.
Right, very good. Chaldea is
Wikipedia.
roughly where Kuwait is now. And I don't know why you attach to emotionally to things when you're a child and growing up. For some reason, it always sounded kind of cool that there was this kind of swampy backwater place. And first of all, I love Middle Eastern history. That's my favorite part of history to begin with. And out of this area in this town called which is like, that's a great name. You are very succinct. Came this lineage of kings that basically took over Babylon and ruled it for 4 generations. Nebuchadnezzar was one of them. And for whatever reason, that always intrigued me. And of course, taking a lot of liberties, I sort of loosely based my initial role-playing game efforts on this corner of the world. Yeah.
Well, how much of the story that we're going to see in the YouTube series is the story that you explored in your campaign? Like, are you retelling your campaign as a YouTube series, or are you telling another story in the world you built with your RPG campaign?
Yeah, that's a good question. We had to go through a process of figuring out, because most RPG session, you're all RPGers and so am I, and I'm probably going to offend all of us here at the same time, but RPGs don't tend to create good stories. I mean,
That's fair.
That's fair.
They tend to create interesting moments,
and
interesting characters and interesting things like magical items or monsters or NPCs and stuff like that. And so we looked at everything that happened in my RPG campaigns over the years as just like a treasure chest full of elements of characters and things, and then the story itself is it's kind of loosely based. The Uber story is kind of loosely based off of what I sat down and surveyed all my players, talked to all the players that have been in campaign over the decades, and said, what were the elements that you liked, that you remember, and it kind of circled around this one particular plot that everybody got very engaged with, and said, okay, we're gonna kind of bring that plot, but we changed the names of a lot of things because back in those days we were plagiarizing like crazy. When you're running your own, and I was in high school when I started this. I mean, you're just like, oh yeah, let's have some Jedi in here. Why not? I mean, you do crazy stuff like that. So it's not very close to how the game was played or exact stories. It's just but mostly some of the characters. So our main character, Jonas Octani, was the player character of Derek will remember, our dear friend CJ, who passed away a few years ago. And everybody, well, just like how everybody loves CJ in real life, within the game of D&D, everybody liked his character, Yo. That was, he named his character Yo. So we said, okay, we'll take YO and make it Jonas Octani. And so that, I don't know, did that kind of answer your question?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's just like it's so interesting to see this like journey going on so far.
Dogs are real interested too.
Yeah, the dogs are really interested.
Oh, so excited.
Well, thank you.
Bonds, I
So-
think you're still muted. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm still, yeah, the dog is just aggro. Sorry for that. They're just really hyped about the show. I mean,
Hyped
so
about
you're
Chaldea.
talking about characters and such. And like, is there a favorite that you have of a certain character that you like? Because you mentioned you do kind of have that one like Disney story ending that you like, but is there one like character that really hits you close in your heart? That is
Yeah, I admit. I of course, Yo, especially because of the connection to CJ, who was such a dear friend. He is our. We have several lead characters, kind of like how Game of Thrones jumps around between different characters. You know, Tyrion and Sansa and Jon Snow, and we kind of follow all these and see how everything kind of comes together. We have a similar structure. We start off with 5 what we call POV characters or lead characters, and Yo is the lead, if you will. He's the most central character. But there's another character named Sarva, who I think is my, it's also one of the scripts that I wrote. I mean, did a first draft out. I'm not that good of a screenwriter, so it needed a lot of work. But she comes from a female-dominated society, and she's a warrior. She's royalty. She's actually the rightful heir to the throne of this country. And her story starts with a failed coup where she tries to retake her throne and fails, and is then in exile. And she's a Middle Eastern character, Babylonian, if you will. We could say Akkadian, and played by an amazing actress who is from UAE. And she does a great job. You see her in the trailer. If you watch the trailer, you can't help but notice a strong Arab woman character that was in this, and her story of being a character out of royalty, but on the lam in exile, having to hang out with a bunch of white dudes is just it's really great, and she just does it so well. That's probably my favorite character. Her name's Sarva.
What were some of the other inspirations? You mentioned some of the historical influences. Were there other historical periods, or were there other works of fiction, or also specifically like getting into motion comics? Were there other motion comics that you tracked down that you thought did a really good job that you tried to learn lessons from or take inspiration from?
Yeah, I have to admit, I was never a big consumer of comics or motion comics. We got into, I know, I shouldn't say that here. I'm promoting
No, it's okay.
something. along these lines.
Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But we kind of but yeah, I think history, fantasy, of course, all the classics. I mean, I'm pretty straightforward in that regard. Of course, Michael Moorcock and Paul Anderson, Fritz Lieber, a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft, not really fantasy, but and I'm suddenly drawing a blank, the guy that wrote Conan. Yeah. So I think most of my influences outside of history were fantasy literature of sort of the mid 20th century.
All right. Very cool.
And within history, I mentioned Babylon, but there's a lot of almost every human kingdom, and it's a world, so there's lots of human kingdoms. Almost every kingdom in Chaldea is loosely inspired from some real world place and time. So there's a Roman inspired kingdom, there's a Japanese inspired kingdom, there's a Celtic inspired kingdom, a lot of Middle Eastern stuff, because that's where my heart is. Egyptian, Hittite, pre-Islamic Arab culture, and Babylonian culture. So there's four real big ones right there. And we got some German and some Chinese and I didn't go and try and design original human cultures, because I think it's almost impossible to do that. I think that we're so influenced by our own history that you can't really escape it. So I decided to embrace it and just be very blatant about, okay, this kingdom is inspired by post-Norman England. Okay, great, got it. And it gives a starting point for costuming, for weapons, for addresses, for the accents. It just gives you a nice place to a grounding spot for people. They instantly kind of feel like, okay, I know where I'm at here a little bit.
I guess so. Like, just thinking about, because this is all like, you built this world and mixed with a little bit of real life, a mix of everything. Like, so this is your baby project. What kind of like future do you see this happening? If all like the check marks hit, like, what do you see the future for Chaldea being?
Well, my main goal is to try and finish it before I die. It's slow. We started working on this as a production in 2014, so it's been 6 years to get to this point, and we're only now just launching the first 8 chapters, and we have a multi-season story that we've mapped out. So I think as far as a business, what's the chance of this making money? I don't know, but it's possible that somebody, the home run would be that somebody like an HBO or Amazon wants to do a live action version of it someday. But I'm not, I don't really think about that stuff. It is a passion project. It's this is where this is where my share of Gen Con's profits go. So, it's putting it back into gaming, or at least gaming adjacent culture.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you want to kind of continue to pursue this in a film or TV kind of avenue. You don't have plans to release a game of it or a campaign of it or a source book for it or something like that.
So my strategy is that I think there's so many campaigns and RPGs and source books out there that I didn't like the idea of coming at Chaldea through that avenue at the beginning. I feel like you need kind of a different way to create a fan base, create interest in it. So I said, so Steve and I decided to embark on what we've been talking about, to basically create a story, and then we'll find out, the people, gamers and non-gamers, fans of fantasy will ultimately decide whether or not we did an interesting enough job that it creates a group of people that like it. And if it does, then we'll have opportunities to license it. So I could see that if it does well, it'd be very natural to do a campaign setting for it. But I don't want to do it myself. I would license it to a company that would go off and do a good job. I don't ever want to have to, make sales calls and do inventory and all that stuff again.
Been there,
that phase of your life has passed.
Yeah, it's a wonder. Let it be an opportunity for someone else. I think the best thing for me to do is to stay focused on creating a great story, hopefully a great story. To promote it, to go out and do interviews, and to manage a YouTube channel, and to do the best I can in sort of the marketing and presentation of Chaldea, and then the fate will decide where it goes from there.
All right.
So chat does have one question for you, very serious question, Peter.
All right.
Marion wants to know where she can buy a Peter Adkison action figure. If you can let us know when the licensing for that will come through.
Yeah. Well,
important.
We'll have to wait for the license, and then there'll be a licensee who will carry that, I'm sure. At some point.
I mean, I guess to think about that, if you could have an action figure made of you, would you want the Funko approach of like the chibi super cute version? Would you want the Todd McFarlane, like hyper detailed, a couple points of articulation, super cool look? Would you want the G.I. Joe figure, like points of articulation everywhere, kind of like, what would you want?
Super buff.
I'm going to give a blatant shout out to all my friends in historical miniatures wargaming, because there is that theme. You might have saw some miniatures being moved around on a board in that trailer. I grew into D&D out of wargaming, and so I think I want a very nicely more of a miniature than an action figure.
I like that.
Yeah, get somebody like Sandra Garrity or Stefan Picorni. Hey Stefano, if you're listening, I think a good mini. There you go.
How much of that scene was just an excuse to use your minis?
100%. 100. We built that. We built that
That's what
scene
I thought.
around that. No, at some point I became connected to Duke Seyfried, Uncle Duke, who also passed. I'm saying this more and more about people I know, people that passed away about 2 years ago. And he was a legendary guy in miniatures back in the 60s, Raul Partha, early TSR. And he was very famous for his dioramas. And so I became kind of interested in these, and I bought some of them. and we were kind of in the genesis of the Chaldea, like, oh, okay, we're going to do this Chaldea, really not knowing what it was going to be. And I told Steve, I said, I think we should build a scene and film it, build it around miniatures. Like I got these beautiful diorama and collection of miniatures from Uncle Duke. And so Bandersnatch is our production effects company, local Seattle company. Some of you know them. They down at the studio. They built a table for it, and we got Uncle Duke to play himself, a cameo, basically play himself as we created an NPC in Chaldea called Uncle Duke, and Uncle Duke plays Uncle Duke. And so when you watch the War Room, which chapter 3, which will come out later, in that chapter, the live action film features Uncle Duke, and it's touching. And the miniatures
very
are playing
special
are miniatures
episode.
that he built, and the diorama is one that he built. And he comes in and it's the old toy maker who Reiswitz hires to make an army for him.
Oh, that's special. That is.
Yeah.
It's really special to hear that you honored him that way.
It was special. It was very special, and I think his wife she plugs Chaldea on paperwork on paperwork Facebook.
There.
It's becoming a job to me already.
It's paper. No.
Yeah.
I think we just have one more question left from chat, just speaking on miniatures and such. They said, will there be a companion tabletop game?
Maybe. We planted a seed for that. The game that they're playing in the fantasy in War Room, the miniatures game they're playing, we gave it a name. We called it Invigi, which is a Norse word for a duel between two warriors. And so we trademarked that, and who knows, there might be and we call it Invigi, and Reiswitz, who's the main military type guy there that's organizing it. He is a master at Invigi, and but he longs to be in a real war, not just these playing with toy soldiers on a board, right?
Sure, Peter, we hear that there's no plans to turn this into a game, but we have trademarked the name of the game that we will. I understand that you're playing both sides of this question.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to be smart about these things, set yourself up for success, make sure you own all the IP, make sure you create what we call uniques and ownables, which are, things that can be trademarked. And so that if there's ever any interest in licensing Chaldea, we have a unique intellectual property that we can license.
Well, great.
Cool. Right. So, so unfortunately, I think there's still like some questions going on in chat. I don't know if we have time to answer. No. So unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all the questions. I know you guys are really excited. That's good. Yes. But you know what? You can leave it on their YouTube channel and then they'll answer it there. So don't forget, click on that link on there to see the Chaldea, basically the world come alive on YouTube. So yes, but thank you, Peter, for joining us as well. It was very great to hear all of this information, the background information, what stories are personal to you. with this passion project of yours, your little baby. That is. But friends, even though it is the end of our episode, don't forget there is still a lot of other shows that go on other than, of course, Table Takes. This is all in Pacific time, mind you. Streaming schedule goes for this week is 6 p.m. on Monday, Board Games with the Brothers Murph. They're brothers, they play board games. Let's see how it goes. Wednesday, we have at 1:30 p.m. This Game Gets Dicey. 2 players from different parts of the world try to play a board game online.
They usually succeed.
And they usually succeed. And it's quite entertaining to watch. You can go ahead and see it there. And of course, Wednesday, we have 4 p.m. Fireside with who else? Peter Adkison. I wonder. Basically, it's a one-on-one interview about the background of making like role-playing games, board games, and seeing people's inspiration. So if you want to see what new ideas people have, and then also compare that with the old style of how like they first brought D&D all together, magic, everything, go ahead and check that out at 4 p.m. And of course, Fridays, you have us at 2 p.m. Table Takes. Yeah, so you can get all of your gaming-related news that are in basically all the stuff that's happening that involves tabletop role-playing games, tabletop games in general, and just all that juicy goodness of what to look forward to in the future. If you miss our episodes, don't worry. We also have all of these live episodes on Twitch go live on YouTube as well 24 hours afterwards. I suggest you follow, subscribe, turn on notifications, and also thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Peter Adkison, for that wonderful interview. Emma, Derek, and of course, Isabella. She couldn't stay behind, but thank you, Isabella, for joining us too. And Marcus behind the scenes. We appreciate you. You guys have a wonderful weekend and enjoy the winter.
Bonsai, can you come do my outro? You're way better at outro than I am.
She's an expert.
I've been practicing. All right.
Bye.